Hi, it's time to look back at what happened at Queen's Park and Ontario politics this week. Premier Ford finally declared a state of emergency in Ontario. There was some evidence that tax cut announcements will be coming from Premier Ford before the June election, and a couple of things to watch for: a decision on vaccine certificates and lower electricity rates at night. Premier Ford finally declared a state of emergency on Friday. But the previous Monday night, the Ambassador Bridge blockade began. This is a critical piece of infrastructure for Ontarians. Factories closed, workers were laid off. There have been complaints over the past week that the province was not acting fast enough. They skipped meetings with the federal government and the city of Ottawa. They failed to put the seizure of vehicles used illegally on the table. They didn't put into force a piece of legislation already passed. This is the 2019 Comprehensive Police Services Act, which would allow costs of extra policing to be charged to protest organizers. And the provincial government also declined to use the powers in the Highway Traffic Act, another provincial power. With the emergency, the province can now impose fines. It can take away licenses. Presumably that's something that somebody in the provincial government could do sitting at a desk in front of a computer. Why the delay? This is the question that opposition politicians are asking. There seems to be a pattern throughout this pandemic. Why are they slow to take action? From past experience, it could be that they're waiting for polling results for input from public opinion. The Toronto Star reported this past week that Premier Ford's government is considering the elimination of the $120 fee for renewing that sticker on your car license. The cost to the Treasury would be about $1 billion. And so you have to ask the question, some people might like that $120 fee back, but that money in the Treasury could be used for other things, to deal with housing, to deal with long-term care in schools and hospitals, to deal with climate change. You have to figure out what you want. The Financial Accountability Office, in a separate report that came out this week, they looked at the expected tax revenue that Ontario was going to get next year, and they compared their estimate with the estimate from the Ministry of Finance, the estimate that the Ministry of Finance was using for their budgeting. And they found that the Ministry of Finance was expecting tax revenues $6 billion lower than the Financial Accountability Office. Now, the FAO, as they're known as, they try to take into account the Ministry of Finance just being careful about budgeting and making conservative estimates. But they could only account for about $4 billion from that, leaving about $2 billion in lower tax revenue in the government's budget, not accounted for, unless there was some expected tax cuts coming. Now, that's a question, again, you have to answer. Do you want to spend money in the Treasury on tax cuts, or do you want to spend money on things like housing, like long-term care, like climate change, like schools and hospitals? It's a political choice. It's one of those choices that we make at election time. You just have to know that it is a choice. You don't get both for free. A couple things to look forward to. One is a decision on vaccine certificates. Dr. Kieran Moore reiterated that it looks like 2 shots doesn't protect that well against transmission. And so we either have to have the certificate changed to require 3 shots, or we drop the vaccine certificate. That's a decision that will be made in the coming days, I think. And finally, the Energy Minister asked the Ontario Energy Board to look at lowering nighttime electricity prices by a lot, which would help electric vehicle owners. And it would help increase demand for electricity at night when the wholesale cost of electricity is, in fact, very low. Thanks for watching, and tell me what you think in the comments below. Please follow me on social media, and please join me next week as I look back at what happened at Queen's Park and Ontario politics.